LGB. 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 LGB.
They say LGB everywhere I go. LGB. What it means, I don't know. LGB. Whatever it is. LGB. Kamala, help me, please. Please.
Alrighty then.
Thank you. LGB.
That's let's go, Brandon. Right?
LGB.
This means let's go, Brandon.
Go. LGB.
Sounds like let's go, Brandon. I guess.
LGB. All right. Let's go, Brandon.
I am Cornholio.
Chant LGB. Right wing and left wing. LGB. Go, you know the thing. LGB. If you don't sing, step back. LGB. And you ain't black. LGB.
Let's go, Brandon.
LGB.
Let's go, Brandon.
LGB.
Let's go, Brandon.
FJB. Let's go, Brandon.
I'm Joe Biden, and I forgot this message.
Greetings, my dear friends, and welcome to another episode of Reading Epic Threads. I'm your host, Patrick Gunnels, joining you from Houston, Texas, this May 5th, 2024 at 4:01 p.m. Central Daylight Time. Once again, exclusively on X for the live portion of this material, just testing out some stuff. I'm seeing, quite frankly, just better growth on X than I'm seeing it on Rumble. So I will live stream this as a recorded episode tomorrow on Rumble. But for today, here we are, and I'd like to see if maybe just a few more of you could jump into the chat. That would be the thing that really makes this experience complete. The interface is perfectly fine once you go to the right spot in X to take part in the chat. A few people did yesterday. I'm hoping that number increases. We shall see. In the meantime, don't forget to go to epicminerals.net, where you can now get the scalp and body serum. Just a drop, guys. It's got castor oil in it, and it's one of the things that we've been working on for quite a while now. And it just takes for little bitty dry spots on your skin, like anything on the skin that might need a little extra attention, just stubborn little patches of dead skin that just don't go away. You rub those bad boys in, scalp and body. And for my scalp, I got to tell you something. I need extra moisturization because I do have a sensitive scalp. And it's not just for baldies like me. Anybody who's got maybe some kind of dry skin problems, dandruff, anything like that, get it on your scalp, get it on your body. It just reverses the effects of our toxic world on your skin. Today's episode is about the campus protests, and I'm going to be relying heavily on Miles Mathis. So make sure to check out mileswmathis.com, milesmathis.com. Incredibly brilliant analyst of world events. I don't always agree with him. He's still brilliant. So I really do like to look into everything that he writes as much as I can. And so without further ado, I'm going to jump right into it. And this one is entitled from mileswmathis.com. Protest.pdf. There it is. So this is called "The Pro-Palestinian Campus Protests Are Being Staged by the CIA." So here we're going to start with, this is so obvious. Why do you think most of them are in masks? To hide the fact that they're outside provocateurs over 25, not students. The mainstream is even admitting that. Zero hedge. Situation is unraveling. Pro-Palestinian protests erupt across America's woke colleges. Colleges and universities across the country are struggling this week to keep pro-Palestinian protesters off school grounds. Students or perhaps a mix of professional protesters, funded by radical leftist groups and dirty Gulf money, I don't know where they got that, are storming campuses and setting up encampments. This is likely a coordinated effort nationwide, as other pro-Palestinian demonstrators have been busy shutting down critical infrastructure across the country, such as airport terminals, bridges, and other choke points that could disrupt the economy. Moments ago, pro-Palestinian protesters invaded Harvard University and, quote, set up an encampment in Harvard Yard, ex-user Colin Rugg reports. He posted footage of the protesters storming the campus. The move comes just days after Harvard restricted access to the yard to only Harvard ID holders, Rugg said. Conceding that although Harvard Yard and other quads were restricted to students only, they have allegedly been powerless to keep out invaders storming the campus. Really? The only people they are powerless to keep out are CIA. Since CIA has a free pass everywhere, they and their college theatrical performers outrank all campus police, city police, and state troopers. We know that this is the CIA in another way. They are trying to blame the college invasion on China. Congress is asking IRS to investigate Chinese funding of anti-Israel protests. You have to laugh. Half the things CIA does, they blame on China or Russia, and the other half they blame on right-wing terrorists. As I have told you many times, events in the U.S. don't need to be faked by China, Russia, Israel, Iran, or anyone else. With millions of agents, with nothing better to do, we are fully capable of faking our own events. You should ask yourself, when did college students get so militant? We saw nary a peep to protest mask restrictions during COVID or vaccine requirements afterwards, especially at places like Columbia and Harvard, though those things affected these students personally and in major ways, sometimes killing them. But this dubious war in the Middle East is reason for them to skip all classes and live in tents on the quad, to get worked up and scream into the cameras, to risk getting killed, to fight cops and get arrested. Doesn't really add up, does it? We are supposed to believe that college students went overnight from quiet, complacent, and obedient to rowdy and rebellious, all due to solidarity with Palestine. You may believe it, but I don't. I also point out these protests began at and are still centered at Harvard, Columbia, and places like that, campuses that are already known as CIA hangouts. Are there really enough militant Muslims on these campuses to drive these protests? I doubt it. I can see that this is all manufactured to move Middle America the other way, deeper into the arms of Israel, all so that these fake students can get lots of bad press and be called anti-Semites by the mainstream press, justifying a crackdown. They have already been called terrorist sympathizers or even terrorists themselves. Public opinion will continue to be manufactured against them, causing your average Joe and Jane to either embrace Israel or keep quiet. It will likely lead to new laws or mandates being passed, forbidding all criticism of Israel and Jews, including bankers, as hate speech. It won't matter that those fake laws are wildly unconstitutional, since it will take several years for the Supreme Court to strike them down. In the meantime, CIA will have done what it was ordered to do: blackwash all opposition as malcontents, conspiracy theorists, and loudmouth kids. Same thing they did in the 1960s and 70s when they blackwashed all government opposition as dirty, smelly hippies and spoiled youth. Then there is this, pictured here. Let's see if I can get a good... pictured here. Now, he's going to notice a million things about this that I won't notice. Students and press look on as Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, Republican of Louisiana, speaks to the media on the lower library steps on Columbia University's campus in New York on Wednesday, April 24th, 2024. That subtext sort of proves my point, doesn't it? That is one of the photos they are leading with in stories today. Johnson isn't trying to talk down a mass protest, is he? No, he is speaking to the media. It's a media event with just a few students looking on. Even without the subtext, you can tell that at a glance. Almost everyone there is media, with just a couple of lines of students in the back. Like everything else, this is all manufactured. Look at the empty bleachers. I bet you missed that. Reminds us of the empty hospitals and emergency tents and ambulances during COVID, doesn't it? Let's see, where are these? Oh, yep, there it is, Kate. Look at my pointer. Bleachers completely empty. Fascinating. What about this? Does that look? Okay, look, everybody's wearing the same. Not in our name and ceasefire now. And wow. And the ones who aren't wearing masks, check out their age. Does that look like an organic protest? Everyone just happened to wear the same shirt. Those weren't produced at Langley Printing. How staged does this one look? Okay, everyone down in the front row, can we get the shot? Jewish girl with the Arafat turban. Be sure you're between the camera and the arrestee. The only guy in Brooklyn wearing a tan shirt, so he stands out. And can someone tell me why that cop is wearing a mask? He must have an IMDb identity. Plus, notice in that last event, we have Jews protesting for Palestine. So it's Jews on both sides of these fake protests. And in this case, they admit it. That should seem kind of curious to you. It is always the Jews pretending to fight each other in these theatricals to create distractions and divisions, but now they cleverly admit it. They know that some will recognize these actors as Jews, so they just admit it, taking you another turn down the rabbit hole. You're supposed to think, oh, these are the Jews with a conscience who don't think Israel should be taking Palestine. But as I am showing you, that isn't what is going on here. Like everything else going on right now, this is another big manufactured eyes-off event. Eyes off the vaccine genocide. These people are trying to prevent their cousins in Big Pharma from getting lynched for crimes against humanity. So that is job one. In this case, division is a secondary matter. Distraction is the main thesis. And as it turns out, Soros and the CIA are also funding these Jewish peace groups. That came out in the news today as well. You will say, what? It is either the CIA or Soros. Can't be both. Yes, it can. Because this is the usual mind screw. After my paper came out, CIA is using Soros to get eyes off them in an emergency, but they are one and the same. As with the Forbes involvement in the modern art project I blew years ago, this Soros funding is mostly a feint. Soros is probably a CIA front himself, with CIA funneling your tax dollars through Soros to pay for this. The money he is supposedly giving these students and all other money he is allegedly donating to causes isn't his own. As usual, it is yours. You are paying for this. In this case, that is just my opinion, but in previous cases like Forbes, it was later admitted. It is because I know of these previous cases that I can guess what is going on here, and if my guess is right, he is probably getting tax credits for his philanthropy and at the same time dodging taxes. The super rich have also been doing that for centuries, so it would be par for the course. This is the way the world works. For more proof, see these interviews with NYU students protesting in New York. They don't even know why they are there and are obviously just actors paid to be on the streets with prefab signage. And when the fake police arrested the fake protesters, guess how many they arrested? 133. You could have predicted it, right? These protests serve a tertiary purpose, that being to stall the real revolution by creating a fake one. Some young people will be drawn into these protests thinking the protests are real and are a viable means of resistance, but since they are only joining a vaudeville act, it will all be for naught. And when this fake revolution inevitably fizzles, it will be like throwing a bucket of cold water on the American public. Reality will once again be preempted by fiction. All right, let's check out these let's see. Are these videos? Are we still linking to this? All right. I don't think that link works anymore. I hope you guys have seen some of the stuff from the so-called protesters. Hey, Dirk McGurkin. What is up, Dirk McGurkin? Jumping in and taking part in the chat. There's 195 of you after 15 minutes. I'm gratified at that. Okay, so that's the piece from the brilliant Miles W. Mathis. I disagree with him sometimes. For example, I think he's a globe earther, which is, in my opinion, absolutely ridiculous. But then he goes so far as to refer to terrain theory as the flat earth of biology, which is particularly ironic. And then he simply attacks Dr. Tom Cowan, saying that Dr. Tom Cowan sounds like Cohen. And then it's brutal, guys, because take me, for example. He would definitely come after me for having a Bronstein in my family line. Bronstein being the same last name as Leo Trotsky, aka Leonard Bronstein. Who am I? Just finding the Jewishness in somebody is not the win that Miles Mathis thinks it is. Still, his ability to discern details is remarkable. All right, so I'm going to go next to Naomi Wolf, and we'll talk more about the U.S. campus chaos. From NaomiWolf.substack.com, U.S. campus chaos. A new October 7th on the way. Are American students walking into a terrifying trap? By Dr. Naomi Wolf. And I'll just preface this by saying, I think those of you who are familiar with the work of Dr. Wolf will know, number one, she's Jewish. Number two, she's a bit of a normie. Number three, she is new to the patriot movement, but she seems very much to me a person of goodwill, a person doing these things in good faith, and a person who loves this country. All right. It's exciting times for the unthinking left across the country, indeed, across the West. University campuses are erupting with the same kind of protest. Nominally, Israel-Palestine is the narrative of these protests. But I am warning here that American students are actually the targets. Tent cities have been hurriedly constructed on college quadrangles. This was a methodology in the 1980s as well, when we protested investment in then apartheid South Africa via campus shantytowns, as they were called then. Students are driven by a range of motivations, ranging from sincere idealism, as many from all backgrounds watch the bombardment and starvation of Gaza with horror, boredom, a generation that has grown up on its phone, finally has a battle replete with heroes and villains, risk and tactics, exciting enough IRL to compete with Mortal Kombat, and ignorance as naive students who have no knowledge of the complexities of the agony of Israel-Palestine conflict, credulously mouth reductive, inflammatory slogans, including "We are Hamas," "Intifada now," and "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free." Students more knowledgeable and compassionate could as easily call for a ceasefire, for peace talks, and for all sides to obey the international rules of war. These protests are not solely organic. It is important at a time such as this to remember something that I have tried to warn the world of since 2007 during the global war on terror. An event can be both real and orchestrated or hyped. A threat can be both real and exaggerated. People involved in an action or protest can be authentically moved by an issue and also be pawns in the strategy of cynical infiltrators or agitators working with guidance from much higher up who are themselves directing activity on a very big chessboard. We, the U.S., at School for the Americas, train our own agitators to go undercover and influence and infiltrate university students overseas, to support our invisible, unstated foreign policy goals. Those who act without knowing that other forces are harnessing their efforts are called by the intelligence community unwitting assets. And I'm going to pause for a moment. Please note the work of Joe Lang on the School of the Americas and the degree to which it has trained foreigners to act as CIA proxies mostly in Latin America, to facilitate the worldwide drug trade. CIA is a terrorist organization. The New York Post has confirmed that many of the protest organizers are being paid by George Soros' Open Society Institute. U.S. Campaign for Palestinian Rights pays organizers and fellows fees ranging from nearly $3,000 to over $7,000 in exchange for 8 hours a week of activism to boost revolution in support of Palestine. The Rockefeller brothers are also a source of funding for these campus agitators. Students are deep in debt to attend such colleges, and even TAs and graduate students often live on income that is below the poverty line. I would point out that Soros and the Rockefeller family could help Palestine and Israel reach a peaceful solution in many other more constructive ways than fomenting campus violence and instability. There is even a fun app, boycat.io, which allows externally funded pro-Palestinian groups to share with students prepared checklists of what they need on campus for the most disruptive protests, with set lists ranging from zip ties to strobe lights to EpiPens and wooden shields. So, clearly, the campuses are pawns in a larger agenda, and the helpless civilians in Gaza caught in tragic world events, along with the targeted civilians in Israel, are simply collateral damage in a larger power play unrelated to their actual well-being. The war waged on U.S. college campuses today is ultimately not about Palestine or Israel at all. It is a war against America, and especially against America's next generation. What does it tell U.S. students when a California campus simply closes before the end of the semester and before graduation due to protest? Cal Poly Humboldt, a smaller campus on which working class and middle class students depend for an affordable education, simply shut down, quote, due to protests over Gaza. UCLA simply closed down classes today. The San Francisco Chronicle asks, how will Stanford and Berkeley react? That is the question of a paid propaganda platform rolling out a nationwide campaign, just as COVID and the lockdowns were strategically rolled out. What are California students, from the most economically stressed to the most privileged, learning? That there is no social contract left for them in America. No matter how hard you worked to get into UCLA or Cal Poly Humboldt, your education can go up in flames overnight. No matter that your parents worked 2 jobs to send in a $30,000 check for a single semester, that semester can be quenched with unrest, just as U.S. students are recovering from the trauma of an unseen pathogen sending them home for a year and a half in 2020 to 2021. They are learning that that chaos is not in the rearview mirror, but that it is always waiting in the wings to shred their plans, their friendships, their learning tracks, and their very futures. Snipers were allegedly spotted on the roofs of Ohio State and Indiana universities. A scary image that looked like gunmen on the roof circulated on social media. Were these snipers or National Guardsmen with tripods? The universities would not clarify. What the students at these schools and students across America are being taught is that their peaceful, civilized campuses that represent some of the most sacred institutions in an advanced civil society can, overnight, turn into places of opaque threats and ill-explained terrors. Then there is Columbia University. 100 NYPD stormed the campus after days of a disruptive standoff, during which, in a scene reminiscent of the Marxist takeover of the campus in 1968, protesters violently entered a building, Hamilton Hall, and locked the students in with bike locks. 300 students were arrested. from both Columbia and from a similar crackdown at CCNY. At several universities, Jewish students and even faculty members were instructed to stay indoors or were accosted and barred from entering classes and common spaces. Other students were warned to shelter in place. Outside agitators are present on U.S. campuses, creating this orchestrated chaos and division. The wife of a professor who had pled guilty to conspiring to aid a terrorist group, Sami al-Arian, was confirmed to be on the Columbia campus prior to the NYPD raid. Mayor Adams also warned that outside agitators were on New York City campuses. I'd note that given the Soros and Rockefeller funds flowing to students themselves, specifically to fund agitation of this kind, the outside agitators include those who were actually on site already. But it could well be that they were joined by other activists external to the community of the universities. Masks and even keffiyehs were often worn so as to hide activists' identities. And as I noted elsewhere, most 19-year-olds in the U.S. can't organize a bathroom cleaning or a grocery run on their own initiative. It is unlikely, in my view, that mass upheaval on multiple campuses at once could be managed by these young adults alone, without some outside, more senior leadership and direction. What is my point in identifying how inorganic these protests are and how artificial is this chaos? Because, as with the weird CCP-style culture that descended on us in 2020, I want you to see that the target of these protests is actually our culture. It is not American to bar entrance to an institution by race or religion. It is not part of American culture to fear for one's life while trying to get an education on an American college campus, taking down the U.S. flag and replacing it with the flag of another nation or people. The Palestinian flag, in this case, is an attack on American culture and on American unity, just as the sickening scene in the U.S. Congress in which our representatives waved the Ukrainian flag en masse is an attack on U.S. culture. The U.S. flag was taken down at City College, New York, and replaced with a Palestinian flag. The Palestinian flag was raised over a statue of John Harvard at Harvard University, Cambridge, Massachusetts. At Chapel Hill, North Carolina, protesters took down the U.S. flag and replaced it with the Palestinian flag. Again, these are 17 to 21-year-olds. Where are the Palestinian flags coming from? How do these attacks on the U.S. flag happen all at once on different campuses? From where are the tactics deriving? How are they being disseminated? This is an attack on America and on its most precious institutions and on the consciousness of its next generation. An organic American protest might have debates. An organic U.S. protest might call for peace. An organic U.S. protest would peter out when finals loom. This mass set of actions is to scar and divide the next generation. There is more here, though, than outsiders, globalists' attack on America via its universities and its youth. There is a serious physical or national security threat that also looms. I see such a serious physical threat to students and to the rest of us being set up potentially by the chaos that has been instigated on U.S. campuses. I have been trying to warn the nation that the fact that millions of immigrants are being bused and flown to strategic locations around the U.S., including to sensitive sites such as O'Hare Airport, and housed in barracks-like group housing, is a situation that can be a setup for a single command that results in a sudden eruption of mayhem across the nation. The risk of this is certainly heightened by the fact that Brian's co-host, former border agent J.J. Carell, warns that hundreds of special interest aliens, meaning immigrants who are either terrorists themselves or who are linked to terrorists, have been allowed to enter the country and been transferred to various internal locations, even though in the past they would have been immediately interrogated, turned over to the FBI, and deported. By the same token, if you have chaos on American campuses and students being locked into buildings, as at Hamilton Hall, if you have outside agitators and heightened emotions and the disruption of the threat of police raids, if you have terrorists or terrorist-aligned infiltrators and covered or masked faces, you have the national security setup for an October 7th type event in America. It took just 50 terrorists to infiltrate the Tribe of Nova Music Festival, an Israeli music festival attended by young adults about the same age or a bit older than the young adults on America's college campuses. In one day, they terrorized the event, killed 260, and took hostages. I dispute this. This hostage-taking brought Israel into a bloody war that has destroyed its prestige internationally, brought about the deaths of thousands upon thousands of Gazans, more than 34,000 according to the AP, and more than 1,200 Israelis, and that has not ended yet. Now, imagine just 100 terrorists in the U.S. At a signal, they can take hostages among the naive young adults who are in the campus encampments. At a signal, 10 campuses can turn into a hostage situation. But who would these hostages be? The children of America's elite middle and working class families. This situation could be a catastrophe for the families, of course, but it could also create a powerful leverage point to bring the U.S. to its knees. There would be images of American kids held at gunpoint, images of American girls who had been raped, images of bodies, perhaps, of American kids in college quads. These would be more than devastating for our nation. These images would destroy our prestige worldwide. The great Satan would be castrated, helpless. Remember the fun, attractively designed app boycat.io? It can, in principle, give potential terrorists a live map of where the protesting students are, who they are, what the layout of various campuses may be, and it may even map what the protesters' friend networks are. It is a living map to a seamless takeover of multiple campuses at once. Who launched the app? To whom are U.S. students giving all of this sensitive data about themselves? Who is harvesting the data? The use of this app, too, is a massive national security vulnerability involving our young adults. The app shares shopping lists for the protests. These lists include EpiPens, asthma medications, and zip ties. Why would protesters need such items? Who is supplying the tents? Why tents? You can slowly stockpile weapons and explosives on a campus. Why asthma medications and EpiPens on the shopping list provided by the Boycat app? Foreseeing a time when people need to be kept alive, but no one can come in or out with supplies. Why are zip ties on the list? You can imagine why. Remember what just a few U.S. hostages held by Iran in 1979 did to the Carter-Reagan election. A hostage situation on multiple U.S. campuses at once could also be used to provoke America to bloodshed overseas, damaging its own standing and reputation, just as Israel has damaged its own status worldwide. Finally, a hostage situation on multiple campuses at once would create such a terrifying distraction and draw so many police, FBI investigators, and National Guardsmen to those college campuses that the whole internal security of the nation could be jeopardized. Military scholars know that terrorists often create a distraction. One bomb goes off, and then when rescuers arrive, there will be a second, larger explosion. This attack on our nation's campuses could be followed by a second internal strike against other targets, strategic targets such as airports, food processing plants, and energy grid operations by terrorists who are now embedded in these many barracks-type housing locations that have been distributed throughout our nation. And that would be a difficult war to fight, even for a superpower. And that would tenderize us, to use a military term that Brian has taught me, for an aerial bombardment or for a land invasion, say via Marxist Canada, now wholly owned by the CCP. I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. Sadly, my warnings have proven about 95% correct since 2007, when I wrote The End of America, and more recently since 2020, when I realized that the war is now upon us. But for the sake of our kids and our nation, please heed my warnings and act, so that my warnings cannot come true. And that is NaomiWolf.substack.com, NaomiWolf.substack.com. I didn't get what the call to action was other than just act. So there's that. I don't really know 100% what we would do to act. I mean, how about pull your kids out of these godforsaken hellholes? And how many campuses are currently stocked up with these retards? I don't know. I don't know if you could really do a whole nationwide attack based on this stuff. So it might be a little bit apocalyptic on Dr. Wolf's part, but you know, we are not talking about somebody who, we're not talking about a lightweight here. So I really think that it makes a lot of sense to pay attention to smart people when they make apocalyptic predictions. Dirk McGurkin says, my real name also sounds Jewish. Such is life. I know, right? Yeah. So I've got just enough Jew in my family tree to make me suspicious to the white boy bros. And there's nothing wrong with pointing out the fact that there's high Jewish concentrations in these organizations, or you could say at the top echelons, in a lot of cases, exclusively Jewish concentrations. But I got a lot of Jew in me. I don't know what to say. I want to say a very heartfelt call to prayer for Chris Ranney, whose house got hit by a tornado. So this is from Chris. Hi, Patrick. Please share on the communities that our home was destroyed by one of the Iowa tornadoes on Friday. No one was hurt, including my Don, his wife, and 16-month-old grandson. Our home will be bulldozed in a few weeks. Do it, and all of our vehicles and much of our possessions are in our former neighbor's field. We don't need financial support, but could use everyone's prayers. This is Chris Ranney, a.k.a. Miss MAGA on Truth Social. Ready to rumble Chris on Rumble. Chris, I am so sorry that happened to your house. We pray that your family gets through this time and that you are showered with blessings after this tragedy. And I'm so glad that no one was hurt. All right, so let's go ahead and I'm stoked. We got Bad Booches saying, love this, never stop reading. Stop, I mean. The Undertaker says, gay fake. No, the Understander says, gay fake. Rip of Truth says, howdy, terrific show. JL nailed it again. Who's JL? Joe Lang, different show. Yeah, he did. He really is the greatest. Okay, what I am stoked about is the fact that some of you really are using the chat. Very exciting when you do that. Also, do me a favor and follow me on X. It's pgunnels1 on X. Be really, really helpful. Also, you can email me, pgunnels@gmail.com, anytime if you have requests for, I don't know, things that I could read or things that you'd like me to cover on the show. And just to give us more of an interaction thing. And I'm really loving this X interface in general. Like right now, I've got 459 of you watching on X. I would not have anywhere near that on Rumble right now. So I don't know what to say. Taylor French is in the chat. Loxists will never see what hits them. That sounds kind of anti-Semitic, Taylor French. Loxist, I think, means Jewish supremacist, but I could be wrong about that. What do you say we jump over to my friend Eric Carlson? Does that sound like fun? All right, here we go. From Eric Carlson, that's erikc.substack.com, erikc, ericc.substack.com. Small Business Destruction, a Substack short. A recent study by business networking platform Alignable found that 43% of small business renters in the U.S. were unable to pay their rent in full and on time in the month of April. Such a high delinquency rate hasn't been reported in the U.S. since March of 2021 at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, when it reached 49%. The delinquency rate was also 4% higher than in March, making it the largest month-over-month surge in over a year. 34% of small business owners have only 1 month or less of cash on hand. When business owners run out of cash, that can mean the end of the business. According to the survey, Texas had the highest percentage of small businesses that experienced rent problems in April, with 52% rent delinquency rate. Massachusetts and California were second and third. The top 3 business sectors experiencing the worst rent problems are restaurants, science and technology, and beauty salons. The latest data is based on poll responses from 4,171 randomly selected small business owners surveyed from April 1st to April 24th. Ironically, someone asked to have a work-related lunch with me last week, and I picked a restaurant convenient for both of us. When I arrived a little early, I realized the restaurant is no longer in business. I texted my colleague and suggested another restaurant nearby. This was a real slap in the face for me. A real-world reminder of how bad things really are for small businesses, restaurants in particular. I've probably eaten at this restaurant a dozen times since it reopened after the COVID lockdowns a few years ago. There always seemed to be a decent number of customers, even more recently, yet they are now closed. To me, this is a sign that it is now too expensive to run a restaurant, or a small business for that matter. And here's the rub. If you raise the prices at your restaurant too much, people will stop eating there. If you don't raise prices enough, you won't be able to make ends meet. Caught between a rock and a hard place. It's kind of like DEI. If you don't adhere to the woke craziness, the major investment firms like BlackRock and Vanguard will jettison you from their investment portfolios. If you do adhere, many of your customers will stop buying your products or services. Either way, you lose. Something people tend not to understand is that 99.9% of American companies or businesses are small businesses. 0.1% of American companies are publicly traded companies, which means they are a part of the stock market. When the average person sees that the stock market is doing okay, they assume the economy is fine. It's not. Many may remember back during the COVID lockdowns how the big box stores were allowed to stay open while small businesses were forced to close shop. For Amazon, Walmart, Target, and Costco, it was business as usual. In fact, they were able to gain a larger market share due to small businesses never recovering and closing down permanently. This was not by accident. This was completely intentional. The COVID lockdowns had multiple purposes. One was to create fear. Another was to bring about mail-in ballots. Another was to shift market shares to the mega box stores and giant tech companies. America is built on the backs of small business owners and small business employees, and many of these small business owners are now being forced out of their businesses, forced to put their businesses needing to take jobs as employees at corporations. Innovation usually starts with small business entrepreneurs, and in some cases, those small businesses grow to be large, influential businesses. Over half of small businesses in Texas were unable to pay their full rent on time in April. California wasn't far behind. What do these states have in common besides their large populations? Both are being invaded at the southern border. While the Biden administration is busy trying to convince the American people that the economy is great and they should stop complaining about everything costing so much, nothing is actually being done to save the economy. While billions of American taxpayers' dollars are being sent to Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan, American small businesses are closing their doors. Entrepreneurial dreams are being shattered. Innovation is being stamped out like a smoldering campfire. The American spirit is being suffocated. One of the biggest reasons the American economy has grown so much over the decades is the entrepreneurial spirit that it elicits. We can't afford to lose that entrepreneurial spirit. The Biden administration is not only allowing that spirit to die, but they are also holding a pillow over its face. What will the administration do next? Will they send stimulus money to small businesses to keep them afloat? Will they continue to ignore the problems in the economy and lie about its health? Or will they continue to keep their feet on the throats of the small business owners of America? We will know soon enough. That's Erik Carlson, E-R-I-K-C, not Substack.com, ERIKC.substack.com. Guys, you need to go to epicminerals.net and you need to get your hands on Epic Moisture. That's right, the creamy body butter. It consists of absolutely nothing not natural, nothing that isn't harvested directly from plants. Ah, yes, it's the smoothest. It's got a very, very subtle scent, and I think that comes from the babassu oil. But it's got amaranth oil, argan oil, babassu oil, grapeseed oil, apricot kernel oil, mango butter, shea butter, and kokum butter. A little bit of vitamin E. And it just soaks right in. Nothing moisturizes you more. Nothing has more vitamin B17 in it, aka Laetrile. Check it out. Epicminerals.net. Promo code Shapiro to pry $1 from my grasping hands. This is a lip serum, and I'm in love with it. Now, this is not for sale, but what I'm loving about it is that it seems to exfoliate your lips gently. I'll need to find out what's in it. Ashley made it. It's got this little metal roller thingy. What do you think? Is that a product release right there? It's like a lip serum. It's amazing. But also, don't forget, we have got the scalp and body serum as well. Check that out, epicminerals.net. And this stuff, you just want to drop just a little bit. And a drop of this stuff, literally a drop of this stuff, just dropped, bam, on your scalp, anywhere on your body. So like at the knuckles of your toes, if there's a little dry skin right there, this is the stuff you want to put there. Check it out, epicminerals.net, promo code Shapiro to pry $1 from my grasping hands. For sure, guys. You're going to love it. All right, I'm going to wrap up the show. Do me a favor. Huge favor to every single one of you, whether you're watching this live on Twitter or whether you're watching it after the fact. Hit a retweet for me on this. Just give me a retweet with this video. See if we can spread this around. And if you're watching this right now and you're not following pgunnels1 on X, please give me a follow. That also helps as well. I'm going to start doing these things exclusively live on Twitter, and then I'm going to be putting them on Rumble the next day, and we'll see how that works out. The more of you I see in this chat, the more success I know I'm going to be having, because the chat, if we can get a really good chat going with this stuff, it's going to be a lot of fun. So I'd like to thank Dirk McGurkin, Rip of Truth, The Understander, Bad Booches, and Taylor French for joining the chat today. You made this stream more fun than it would have been otherwise. Let's round out the show, guys. Let us pray. Saint Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle. Be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. And do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, cast into hell Satan and all evil spirits who prowl about the world, seeking the ruin of souls. Amen. I love you all. Thank you so much for being here. And I'll see you tomorrow. And this is the period of time when I have to just sit here, because when I upload this as a recording, it's going to cut off literally like the last 15 seconds. And I want the recording people to hear Donald Trump saying, "Hi, guys."